Verify ready for launch. FTS.
FTS go. Prop.
Go. ABI.
ABI's go.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Good evening and welcome to the GPS 39 launch webcast. SpaceX's Falcon 9 rocket is currently awaiting liftoff from Space Launch Complex 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida. Hello everyone, my name is Zachary Lupin and I'm an avionics supply chain engineer here at SpaceX. Tonight we'll be taking one of the U.S. Space Force's most advanced GPS satellites to orbit, GPS III SV09. Falcon 9 launched 11 national security missions back in 2025, and tonight's launch will be our second national security mission of this year, with several more on this year's manifest for the NRO, the Space Force, and the Space Development Agency. GPS 39 is Falcon 9's third accelerated mission for the U.S. Space Force. Back in December of 2024, Falcon 9 launched the Rapid Response Trailblazer 1, which demonstrated U.S. capabilities to rapidly deploy national security satellites. And following that mission, in May of 2025, we launched a second accelerated mission with GPS 37, preparing that satellite for launch in less than 3 months. Now, this type of mission typically requires a 2-year planning cycle, so the condensed turnaround time here is considerable. After tonight's mission, 9 of the 10 GPS 3 satellites will have been launched, with Falcon 9 launching all but one of them. Now here's an image of the GPS 39 satellite that teams encapsulated into Falcon 9's fairing ahead of arriving at the hangar at SLC-40 in Florida last week. Now this mission also marks the fastest national security space launch turnaround, with launch occurring just 41 days after we were awarded the contract, a new record for accelerated launch capabilities. As for the launch vehicle, this will be the 5th flight for the Falcon 9 booster supporting this mission, after launching KF-01, which deployed 24 Internet constellation satellites for Amazon, IMAP, a NASA mission to map the boundaries of the heliosphere, a recent national security mission NROL-77, and 1 Starlink mission. At T-minus 7 minutes and 20 seconds, the range is green, and we are on track for an on-time liftoff at 11:53 p.m. Eastern Time. Now, if for any reason we are unable to launch today, a backup opportunity is available tomorrow at 11:34 p.m. Eastern Time. But for now, weather is good, with a less than 5% possibility of launch weather constraints. So with that, let's meet the rocket on the pad. The Falcon 9 rocket supporting today's mission is a 2-stage rocket designed for the reliable and safe transportation of satellites, cargo, and people. Starting from the very top of the rocket, we have the payload fairing. The fairing is a protective shell that houses all the payloads, shielding them from aerodynamic heating until the vehicle is outside the Earth's atmosphere. And the shape of the fairing contributes to Falcon 9's overall efficiency, helping to reduce drag during the rocket's ascent. Once in space, those fairing halves will separate and fall back to Earth, where they'll be recovered by one of our recovery vessels to be refurbished and reused on later flights. And speaking of which, both fairing halves on today's mission.
Stage 1 RP1 load is complete.
And good call out there for RP1 load. And speaking of which, both fairing halves on today's mission are flight proven, with both sides flying for their second time tonight. Right below the fairing is Falcon 9's second stage, which possesses a single Merlin vacuum engine, or MVAC, with a larger engine nozzle optimized for operating in vacuum. And below the second stage is the black carbon fiber inner stage, which is where that MVAC engine is housed. And below that, we have the first stage, or booster, that is fully loaded with about 1 million pounds of liquid oxygen and RP1. Now, the first stage makes up the bottom 2/3 of the vehicle and has 9 Merlin M1D engines at the bottom, which generate more than 1.7 million pounds of thrust. And as I mentioned earlier, the first stage supporting today's mission will be making its 5th flight today. Now, about 2.5 minutes into flight, the first and second stages will separate, and the booster will make its way back to Earth to land on our drone ship, a shortfall of Gravitas, which is currently stationed in the Atlantic Ocean. At T-minus 5 minutes and 18 seconds, weather continues to look favorable, and teams are tracking no issues. Now, coming up next in the countdown, the Transporter Erector, or TE, will begin to retract away from Falcon 9. The TE is that large truss structure you see standing next to the vehicle.
Falcon 9 tanks are pressing for strongback retract.
And good call out there. That TE is that large truss structure next to the rocket. It's hinged at the base and connected to the launch mount beneath the first stage. First, we'll see the clamp arms open around the second stage, and then the TE will begin to pivot back, slowly swinging away from the rocket. We should be seeing those clamp arms opening in just under 20 seconds from now. Now, those clamp arms help stabilize the second stage during fueling and prevent movement.
Strongback retract has started.
And good call out there for strongback retract. Those clamp arms help stabilize the second stage during fueling and prevent movement in high winds. And once they're open, the rocket will be fully free at the top, but will still be held down at the base. And you can see those clamp arms opening around the top of the second stage there on your screen. Now, you may also hear the TE called out as the strongback, though strongback is just one of the components of the TE, and it does a lot of heavy lifting as it rolls Falcon 9 out onto the pad, raises it vertical, and stays connected to the rocket through the final seconds before launch. It provides fuel, power, telemetry, and command connections between ground systems and the vehicle. And with those clamp arms fully open, we can now see the strongback reclining away from Falcon. Now, at this stage in the count, both stages are nearly fully loaded with about 1 million pounds of propellant. And that includes Rocket Propellant 1, or RP1, a highly refined kerosene, and liquid oxygen, or LOX, chilled to roughly 300 degrees below zero. Now, the first stage will finish loading propellant at around the T-minus 3 minute mark, and the second stage will finish up about a minute later.
Stage 1 LOX load is complete.
And there's that call out for completion of Stage 1 LOX loading. Now, looking ahead in the count, at the T-minus 60 second mark, Falcon 9 will enter startup. And at that point, the rocket's onboard flight computers will take over. And from there on out, the countdown will be fully autonomous. And then just inside of T-minus 2 seconds, the 9 Merlin 1D engines will ignite. And once they're at full power, Falcon 9 will lift off from the pad and begin its climb to orbit. At T-minus 2 minutes and 30 seconds, the range continues to be green, payload remains healthy, and the team is still tracking no issues. Coming up shortly, we should be hearing that call out for LOX loading completion on the second stage.
Stage 2 LOX load is complete.
And there's that call out for Stage 2 LOX loading completion. Falcon 9 is now fully loaded with 1 million pounds of RP1 and LOX. Now, coming up shortly, we'll hear that call out that Falcon 9 is in startup. As a reminder, that is the point in the count when the autonomous flight computers will take over the launch count.
Yes, launch closeouts.
And good call out there. It'll be at that point that the autonomous flight computers will take over the launch countdown and both stages will pressurize for launch. Afterwards, we will then wait for the final go, no-go from the launch director for today's mission. So we should be hearing that call out for Falcon 9 startup in just about 10 seconds from now.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
Exciting news there that Falcon 9 is in startup. We're now just waiting for that final go, no-go from the launch director for today's mission.
Mission directors, go for launch.
And there you heard it, the LD is go for tonight's mission. So let's sit back and watch as Falcon 9 takes the GPS 39 satellite to space.
T minus 30 seconds. T minus 15 seconds. T minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Engines full power and liftoff. Go Falcon, go GPS 39.
Vehicle is pitching downrange.
Chamber pressure nominal.
At T plus 30 seconds and counting, Falcon 9 has successfully lifted off from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida. Now in just a few moments, we'll be throttling down the engines in preparation for Max Q, which stands for Maximum Aerodynamic Pressure.
Falcon 9 power and telemetry are nominal.
And good call out there for nominal telemetry. Max Q is the point at which the rocket experiences the greatest amount of stress as it ascends through the Earth's atmosphere. Now the vehicle is also pitching downrange.
Falcon 9 is supersonic.
When the vehicle is pitching downrange to go from vertical to horizontal, the first stage is performing a maneuver known as a gravity turn. Now the booster does this by gimbaling its engines very slightly so that the vehicle slowly becomes
Max
horizontal.
Q.
And there's that call out for Max Q. Now the rocket typically needs to go 17,500 miles per hour horizontally in order to avoid being pulled back down to Earth and get into orbit. And you can track our progress to orbit by watching the left corner of your display that's showing the vehicle's velocity and altitude. Now,
MVAC, chill.
Now coming up next, we're going to have several events happening in rapid succession, and we should hear all of these called out by Mission Control, starting with main engine cutoff, or MECO, then stage separation, and then SES-1. MECO is where we shut down all 9 M1D engines on the first stage, followed by stage separation, which is where the first and second stages of Falcon separate from one another, and second engine start 1, or SES-1, is when we light the MVAC engine on the second stage for the first time. So keep an eye out for these events happening back-to-back just about 20 seconds from now.
Main engine cutoff.
Stage separation confirmed.
MVAC ignition.
And there we heard confirmation of that series of events, which again were MECO, followed by stage separation, and then SES-1. Now coming up shortly will be fairing separation. Once the vehicle reaches the vacuum of space, the payload fairings are...
Both vehicles are following nominal trajectories.
And good call out there. Once the vehicle reaches the vacuum of space, the payload fairings are no longer needed and will be jettisoned away. And as mentioned earlier, we'll be attempting to retrieve these fairing halves again once they fall back to Earth. As a reminder, both fairing halves are flying for their second time tonight. We're expecting that call out for fairing separation in just under 10 seconds from now.
Fairing separation confirmed.
And there you have it, confirmation of fairing separation and a beautiful view of the GPS 39 satellite. Now, we're still in the first MVAC burn on the second stage, and this burn should last for another few minutes. Now, the next milestone coming up will be the first stage entry burn in about 2 minutes from now. Now, today, Falcon 9 is performing 2 burns in order to land. The first burn, known as the entry burn, will slow down the vehicle before hitting the denser parts of the Earth's atmosphere. And without this burn, we'd only be using the atmospheric drag to slow down Falcon 9, which would add extra stress to the vehicle. Following that entry burn, shortly thereafter, the booster will initiate the landing burn, which will slow the vehicle down before touching down on our drone ship. Now, when Falcon 9 fires up the center M1D engine for re-entry, the vehicle will be flying through Merlin's exhaust, which deposits a layer of soot onto the vehicle's surface. As a given booster becomes more and more flight proven, that soot layer will build up more and more on the surface of the rocket.
Both vehicles continue to follow nominal trajectories.
Now, as the booster is descending back to Earth, Falcon 9 will be using its 4 titanium hypersonic grid fins positioned near the top of the first stage to steer the vehicle towards its landing point. And from time to time, when the booster is on screen, you may also see white puffs coming from the booster, and those are cold nitrogen gas bursts, which will help with attitude control. And we've got about 30 seconds until that entry burn starts. And in addition to the camera view lighting up, you can also follow the relight of the engines via the graphics at the bottom of your screen. Should be hearing that call out for entry burn in just about 5 seconds from now.
Stage 1 FTS is saved.
Stage 1 entry burn startup.
And there's confirmation of entry burn startup on the Falcon 9 first stage. Now, this burn is set to last about 30 seconds and again is slowing down the vehicle in preparation for its final burn and landing.
Stage 1 entry burn shutdown.
And there's confirmation of entry burn shutdown of the Falcon 9 booster on the left-hand side of your screen. Now, next up for that booster will be...
Both vehicles continue to follow nominal trajectories.
Good call out there. Now, next up for the booster will be its landing burn, and we'll be attempting to recover this booster on our drone ship, a shortfall of gravitas, which is currently stationed in the Atlantic Ocean. Concurrently, we're also expecting shutdown of the second stage MVAC engine, which is known as second engine cutoff, or SECO-1. And we're expecting that SECO-1 callout to occur just a few moments before that landing burn starts.
Stage 2 has entered terminal guidance. Stage 1 transonic.
Another series of nominal callouts for both the Falcon 9 first stage and the second stage.
Stage 2 FTS is saved.
And we should be hearing that callout for SECO-1 of the MVAC engine in just a few moments from now.
MVAC shutdown.
Stage 1 landing burn.
And there we heard confirmation of MVAC shutdown of the second stage engine on the right-hand side of your screen, and landing burn startup of the booster.
Nominal orbit insertion. Landing leg deployed. Stage 1 landing confirmed.
And awesome news there, confirmation of the Falcon 9 booster on our drone ship, a shortfall of gravitas. Now, we also heard confirmation of good orbit. A good orbit means that we've got the vehicle into the trajectory we need leading up to SES-2 without needing to perform any additional engine burns or corrections. Now, as a reminder for the Falcon 9 booster, this was the 5th flight for this booster tonight. And back in space, the second stage is continuing its mission to deliver the GPS III SV09 satellite to orbit. The next major milestone will be a second startup of the Merlin vacuum engine on the second stage, referred to as SES-2. And that is coming up at about the T plus 1 hour and 3 minute mark. So we'll be taking a break and we'll be back just before SES-2. In the meantime, enjoy the views and the space jams.
caught up, didn't it?
Welcome back to our live coverage of the GPS III-9 mission. It's been a great launch and overall mission so far. We had an on-time liftoff at 11:53 p.m. Eastern Time from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida and launched and recovered the first stage for its 5th time on our drone ship, a shortfall of gravitas in the Atlantic Ocean. The MVAC engine on the second stage then ignited just a couple minutes after liftoff, and its burn lasted just under 5 minutes, propelling the second stage and our payload to orbit. Coming up next, we'll have the second startup of the Merlin vacuum engine on the second stage, called out as SES-2. And we're expecting to hear that call out in just about 50 seconds from now. Now, as a reminder, this is the second and final burn of the MVAC engine prior to payload deployment. And we've got some spectacular views of Earth in the background, with the spacecraft currently passing south of Australia. We're expecting to hear that call out for SES-2 in just about 13 seconds from now.
MVAC ignition.
And there we have it, confirmation of SES-2. Now this burn is set to last about 1 minute, and we'll get the payload into the proper orbit for payload deployment. And after the second shutdown of the Merlin vacuum engine, we're going to take another break before the most important milestone of our mission, payload deployment. We should be hearing the call out for SECO-2 in just a few moments.
MVAC shutdown.
As you heard and saw, there's SECO-2 indicating shutdown of the MVAC engine and the final burn before spacecraft separation. Coming up next, we'll be having our payload deployment at the T+1 hour and 29-minute mark. So stick around, listen to some space jams, and we'll see you back here in about 23 minutes.
We sat there in 25th century AD. We sat there and looked at a rocket from Mars, and you just boggled the mind and mind and mind and mind. And the technology caught up, didn't it?
Welcome back again to our live coverage of the GPS III-09 mission. Before the break, we saw the second burn of the Merlin vacuum engine on the second stage, which lasted about a minute before shutdown. Following that, we received confirmation that the vehicle was placed into a good orbit. And now we've got an amazing view of the GPS III-09 payload as it is currently over the Pacific Ocean west of Mexico. We're now waiting for payload deployment, coming up at the T plus 1 hour, 29 minute, and 19 second mark. Now, as a reminder, tonight's payload is GPS III-09. The GPS III SV09 satellite is specially named in honor of Colonel Ellison Onizuka. Onizuka was a flight test engineer in the U.S. Air Force and flew on Space Shuttle Discovery, STS-51C, in 1985. Tragically, 1 year later, he served as mission specialist for STS-51L on Space Shuttle Challenger, which broke up 73 seconds into flight. Now, after tonight's mission, 9 of the 10 GPS-3 satellites will have been launched, with Falcon 9 launching all but one of them. And we should be hearing that call out for payload deployment in just a couple moments.
Payload deploy confirmed.
And there you have it, successful deployment of the GPS III-9 satellite. And with successful deployment, we'll be bringing tonight's live mission coverage to a close. We'd like to thank the United States Space Force for entrusting us with today's mission, as well as the Range and FAA for their support. And if you're interested in more launch coverage, head on over to spacex.com/launches for the most up-to-date information. And when you're there, check out our departure board with all the details about our upcoming missions. And of course, remember to follow @SpaceX on X for more updates. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you again soon.